So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the European Commission's press room. Thank you also for following us live on Europe by satellite. Today is Monday, 31st of October. Our only announcement of today concerns the informal meeting of Ministers of Trade, which is taking place right now in Prague. So let us remind you about participation and agenda of this meeting. The Commission is represented there by our Executive Vice President, Valdis Dombrovskis. The Executive Vice President and the Ministers will receive Ms. Catherine Tai, the US Trade Representative. Together, they will exchange views in light of the upcoming third meeting of the Trade and Technology Council. The meeting will also address the geopolitical importance of trade and EU digital trade policy. A press conference with the Executive Vice President Dombrovskis is foreseen at the end of the meeting. This is expected to be at around 2 p.m. this afternoon. So, as usual, we will invite you to keep trade-related questions for that press conference where the Executive Vice President can take them. That is all for today in terms of announcements. And now, please, let us know if you have any questions. Yes, you go ahead.
Thank you very much, Diana. Jerome Hughes here. I just wanted to ask about the potential for the EU getting involved in peace negotiations regarding the war in Ukraine. For example, Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. When this issue is raised, the Commission comes back with quite lengthy response talking about the need for peace negotiations and so on, even though this is a clear-cut violation of international law according to the United Nations. But when you're asked about potential peace talks with Russia or Ukraine and Russia, the answer is quite simplistic. Russia can end it directly. It's Russia's war. Russia can withdraw straight away. So is there a mismatch here in terms of the approach?
Thank you very much for your question, Jerome. I think that you know your answer, and we've been discussing this for at least 8 months so far, but Nabila will be very happy to give you the main tenets.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. I mean, as you know, the EU, since the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, has been condemning in the strongest possible term the unprovoked and the unjustified invasion of Ukraine by the armed forces of Russia. You would have probably noticed today that there are further attacks, missiles, on Ukraine, on Ukrainian infrastructure, depriving Ukrainians today from anything that has to do with heat, with water, with anything. Kiev is today in a terrible situation. The EU has always said that it was against this Ukraine grossly violating international law and international humanitarian law, and is causing massive loss of lives and injury on the civilians on Russia. So this is when it comes to Russia, and of course it is very important for us to end this war. It is for Putin to end this war as soon as possible. And of course it is very important for peace to reach this Ukraine and the neighborhood. When it comes to the Middle East peace process, I mean, you know that the EU has been engaged very, very heavily on the Middle East peace process. The EU High Representative is personally very much engaged. The EU is one of the biggest donors to the Palestinian Authority and to the Palestinian people. The HRVP back in the UN has also worked very heavily to negotiate and to work together with the Palestinians and with the Israelis to reach a peace process with the two-state solution. This is what I can say at this point.
Thank you very much. Jerome, follow-up.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up. But you see, even there again, we see that you say more about negotiations regarding the Middle East peace process. No sanction against Israel, despite what's happening against Palestinians. You talk about peace negotiations being heavily involved, but we don't hear anything from the EU side about peace negotiations from in relation to the war in Ukraine. And we've heard calls from the Pope Francis. We've heard it in the European Parliament. It just seems to be not on the agenda at all. Am I completely off the mark in that regard?
When it comes to peace negotiations, we have always said that whoever can use its influence to stop the war in Russia and to stop the war in Ukraine, we will support this. We have always said that.
Thank you. Any other questions on foreign affairs for Nabila? Foreign affairs, all of them. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Silvia Yuso from El País newspaper. Actually, I have two foreign affairs questions. The first one is on the victory of President Lula da Silva in Brazil. I'm not getting to the commercial part because I understand this is happening in Prague, but there's been a quite warm welcoming from European institutions to the victory of Lula. My question is, what do you expect? What changes and what do you think might change in the relationship? President von der Leyen also said in September in her speech, Europe needed to look for new alliances, also regarding with Ukraine. What kind of guarantees or commitments do you expect from the new Brazil? Thank you. And if I have a second one on Giorgia Meloni are coming on Thursday. Do I wait for the question, or do you want me to formulate them?
Let's take foreign affairs questions first. I will take first the Brazil one. Before giving the floor to Nabila for the broader perspective, let me draw your attention to the fact that President von der Leyen this morning congratulated the President-elect of Brazil, and the President expressed her hope to and wishes to be working with the next president of Brazil to address pressing global challenges ranging from climate change and, of course, biodiversity protection to food security or trade-related questions. And on the broader question, Nabila.
Well, thank you for the question. I will refer you simply to what the HRVP has said yesterday as soon as we got the polls result to elect the president in an actually very peaceful and well-organized election. We do congratulate, the EU congratulates Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva as president-elect, and we commend the Electoral Court, in particular for the effective and transparent manner it conducted its constitutional mandate through all stages of the electoral process, demonstrating once again the strength of Brazil's institution and its democracy. And as you know, the EU and Brazil has a long-standing partnership based on the shared values and the respect for democracy, human rights and rule of law. And this is exactly what we expect and how we want to deepen and broaden our relationship with Brazil in all areas of mutual interest, including trade, environment. I know that you don't want to ask about trade right now. Miriam will answer probably. Climate change and digital agenda to the benefit of the people. So basically, we will enhance and work together in favor of an inclusive and just and sustainable development. The HRVP has said that he is actually looking forward to work together with the President-elect Lula and his government, as well as the Congress and the state authorities.
Thank you, Nabila. Any additional questions on Brazil or foreign affairs? Yes, go ahead.
A quick follow-up. In the past, at least, Lula also was a very strong supporter of the BRIC countries, which were also China, Russia. I understand the situation is different now, but he's always had a close relationship to China at a moment that also the European Union is rethinking its relationship to China. Are you worried and somehow that Brazil, a giant like Brazil, could come closer to China in this moment, or are you going to talk about this as well? Is that on your agenda? Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we're going to talk about everything that has to do with our mutual interest, but I would like to get back to China. We did not change our position on China. We do still have the same position on China. As for the relationship with Brazil, we will see how it will go, but we only have a very good hope for a future that is actually where we will work very well together. So I do not see any problem, or I do not foresee any problem, and I would not speculate further than that.
Thank you very much. Additional foreign affairs questions, please, Nawab.
Yes, thank you, Dana. Nabila, has the European Union been invited to the Arab League summit, which is going to be held soon in Algeria? And if yes, who is going to represent the EU? I mean, as an observer.
I do think that yes, but I need to check on this, and for sure we will be represented if that's the case. But I will get back to you with further elements on that.
Thank you very much. Additional foreign affairs questions. I have also many in the chat, but go ahead first.
Theodor Vasiljevic, Euronews Serbia. So my question is about license plates in Kosovo. So we saw your statement from 2 days ago, but can you provide us with more information about further steps of the European Union and its partners? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your question. Well, I mean, you've seen our statement where we do take note of the Kosovo's decision, governments for the most recent decision related to the license plate. It is very clear that what we want is, as we said in the statement, that Kosovo has the right to phase out the KM plates, but the process needs to take in a manner agreed in the dialogue and implemented in an inclusive and consultative fashion, while the decision, as we say, is a step in the right decision. It is not aligned with the dialogue agreement, which are binding of both parties, and the relevant agreement from 2016, as you know. The EU will continue to engage with our partners to find a lasting solution. And of course, we do call on stakeholders to maintain calm and prevent unnecessary renewed tensions on the ground.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions on foreign affairs? So please, in the chat, only keep your hand up if it's about foreign affairs. And is it about the same issue? It's close to. So we take this one first, and then we go to the chat, where there are a few hands up for you, Nabila.
Thank you very much. Ivan Miunovic from the television of Montenegro. It's also about Western Balkans. As it was announced, the President of the European Commission will participate in Berlin summit later this week. So my question is she going to meet Montenegrin leaders during this event, having in mind that she didn't visit Montenegro during her visit on the Western Balkans last week due to bad weather in Belgrade? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question, which allows me to say once more how much we regretted the fact that we couldn't make the trip to Podgorica because of very thick fog. We couldn't make that trip. Of course, the President is keen to discuss with her counterparts from Montenegro as soon as feasible. We are looking at the possibility of perhaps rescheduling the trip. And as you say, this week there is the Berlin Process Summit. I'm not aware at this point in time about the participation from all the Western Balkans countries there. But of course, she will use that opportunity as well to pass messages regarding our support to Montenegro. But watch this space. We hope to be in a position to announce something regarding Montenegro soon. Right. Then I continue with foreign affairs questions, and I take it that Thomas's hand indicates that he has a question on foreign affairs. So if that's the case, Thomas, go ahead.
Ukraine, arming Ukraine, and the ammunition for the German Gepard cannons that was given, the cannons were given to Ukraine, and the ammunition is manufactured in Switzerland. Does the Commission believe that Switzerland should make an exception to the rules preventing the export of armament, and therefore allow Germany to provide Ukraine with the ammunition for these cannons, or not? And if yes, why? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. This is a very detailed question, and seeing from Nabila's face, I realize that we may need to get back on some aspects to later. As a general principle, we believe that it's important to support Ukraine in all possible ways. That also included, as you know, bilateral support on a military assistance level from the member states, support which is also underpinned by the European Peace Facility, as you know, through funding. But on this specific question, I wonder if Nabila has anything else to add.
I mean, Thomas, this is really an issue for the member state, and I would refer to what Dana just said. When it comes to us, we are determined to help Ukrainians and Ukraine defend itself, and that's why we have today a total of 3.1 billion under the European facility that is going to cover the expenses for equipment to the Ukrainian armed forces, and they are fighting with their fierce resistance following Russia's unprovoked, unjustified invasion of Ukraine, and we are responding to the basic and the most urgent needs, and we will continue to do so as long as it is needed. And this is besides all the help that is being given to Ukraine in terms of weapons by the member states.
Thank you very much, Nabila. Are there additional foreign affairs questions? Please only keep your hand up. Again, if you have questions on foreign affairs, I have a few more in the chat first, and then I will get back to you, unless it's specifically about this as a follow-up on Ukraine. Yes, go ahead then.
Thank you, Lyubov Pronina, Bloomberg News. It's actually about Ukraine and agriculture. Can you say what the European Union is doing or planning to do in reaction to Russia pulling out of the grain deal? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question.
So when it comes, I mean, if it's agriculture, it's not me, but when it comes to the grain deal, I mean, as you've seen, we have reacted yesterday on this issue. Russia's decision to suspend the participation in the Black Sea puts at risk the main export route of much-needed grains and fertilizers to address the global food crisis caused by its war against Ukraine. The agreement has made a significant difference by allowing exports of Ukraine's grain to the global markets and to the ones most in need. And together with the EU-Ukraine solidarity lanes, the UN Black Sea grain has made it possible the export of significant volumes of Ukrainian crops, agricultural products and fertilizers to the countries most in need. And we urge, of course, Russia to revert its decision and to resume the implementation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Of course, you would have seen that the HRVP had a call yesterday with the UN Secretary General to discuss exactly this matter and to coordinate actions to ensure grain and fertilizers export from Ukraine. Russia must go back to the agreement to allow maritime corridors for food to reach the world.
Thank you, Nabila. So indeed, on the one hand, we will pursue our efforts, which we launched many months ago, to help bring grain out of Ukraine, to not only enable Ukraine to generate revenues by selling its crops, but also for, of course, making sure that those valuable grain and those valuable crops get to countries which need them around the world. So this we have done with our solidarity lanes, as Nabila was mentioning, which led to the which helped export more than 13 million tons, according to the latest information that I had. Perhaps by now it's even a bit more, but Stefan will have the details. If you so wish, he can give you the latest figures afterwards. And in addition to that, and on top of that, on a separate track, we are providing support to countries around the world to increase their food security, either with or both with immediate support and with medium-term support to increase their resilience to fluctuations in the food market situation, and to make sure that they become more resilient and able to provide for their populations. So those are the two tracks of work on which we have been working very hard with our partners, and work will continue on both. Any additional questions for Nabila on foreign affairs? I see a few hands up in the chat, so I'll go first the floor to those colleagues. So first, Rose, go ahead.
Yeah, is this working? Sorry, it's my first time.
It's working. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. It's just a follow-up on the solidarity lanes. I've seen different figures on how much was exported in August via the solidarity lanes from the Commission and the French Foreign Affairs Ministry. I just wanted to know if we could confirm figures for August and September. And also I saw that the French farming minister today, Marc Fesneau, said that France is working towards enhancing these lanes. He said that to allow Ukraine to export food supplies via land routes rather than the sea. I was wondering if there was a coordinated effort that was happening, if it was not just France kind of working on its own on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Rose. It is indeed relevant for our discussion, but that would involve the participation of Stefan, because he's the one following the lane. So I will invite him to provide you a quick answer, while Nabila will stay close by, because she will have a number of other questions from the colleagues.
Thank you very much for the question. Indeed, these solidarity lanes have proven to be extremely important, a lifeline for Ukraine, and actually the main tool of imports and exports between the European Union and Ukraine. When we look at the figures, you have to make a distinction between agricultural products and non-agricultural products. The agricultural products, since from May until now, basically until the 20th of October, we around more than 14 million tons have been exported using these solidarity lanes. During the same period, May-October, 15 million tons have been exported of non-agricultural products. Here we're talking about non-agricultural products such as steel, but also oil, any other products, or also humanitarian products that have been exported. So that brings the total to around 29 million tons for the period May until October. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Are there any additional questions regarding the solidarity lanes, as Stefan is here on the podium? Before we go back to Nabila. So please only keep your hand up if you have questions on the solidarity lanes. I see, Rose, that your hand is still up. Perhaps you have a follow-up question. So if that's the case, go ahead first.
On Saturday, as I saw an announcement by the French farming minister, I was wondering how this was being coordinated on an EU level to intensify the solidarity lanes. Thank you.
We missed the beginning of the question, but I hope I got the gist of it, which is what type of coordination do we have with the member states with regards to the future of solidarity lanes? Of course, we work closely together with the member states on these matters. We have the same aim, which is to step up support, to enlarge and to diversify the ways in which we can get grain out of Ukraine and other products as well, because the solidarity lanes are also used for the transport of other type of goods. But there is nothing more specific in relation to this that we can add at this stage.
I think the lanes are indeed here to stay. They're an extremely important lifeline for the Ukraine's economy, and they will become even more important in the future. We must continue to improve the capacity of these routes, these solidarity lanes, to make them more efficient and attractive on both sides, of course, in close cooperation with all the member states and our friends in Ukraine.
Thank you very much. So please only keep your hand up if you have a question on the solidarity lanes. I'm checking your cues in the chat, and I understand that all the colleagues who have their hand up at this stage want to ask about something else linked to foreign affairs. So I think I can safely free Stefan for now, and Nabila will be back. And then we proceed with a question from David. David, go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Yesterday, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said that the EU will launch a further sanctions package against Iran and are examining whether they can list the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards Corps, as a terrorist organisation. Has the Commission been asked to prepare such a sanction, and if so, when will it go to the ambassadors?
Thank you very much, David. Indeed, a very important question, but this is about the area of sanctions where, as you know, we are tight-lipped before anything is put on the table. But Nabila.
Indeed, very well said, Dana. Thank you. So the IRGC is listed, I will give you the process so that you know, is listed under the Iran WMD sanctions regime. So that's why it is very difficult. So I would not comment on the eventual discussions in the Council as they are confidential. And of course, I will not speak on behalf of the German. So I would invite you to go to them. However, the addition of the organizations to the so-called terrorist list is subject to a Council decision and regulation adopted by unanimity. So the purpose of this list is, of course, to coordinate at EU level restrictive measures against persons, groups and entities involved in terrorist acts. And under the EU law, the prerequisite for listing an organization on an EU terrorist list is a national decision by a competent national authority, such as a court decision or a proscription order by an administrative authority. This means that at EU level alone cannot act without such a national decision. So the national decision in question must have been taken for acts that fall under the definition of terrorist acts laid down in EU law. So this is the process, and I think that it answers your question.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on Iran? If that's the case, please keep your hand up. I see two hands up, but I know from the chat that they referred to something else. But still, let's take them at this stage because I see no other questions in the press room on Iran. So yes, Aida, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I had a question regarding the migration deal that's been signed yesterday between Egypt and the EU. I was just wondering if you could give us a timeline from what's happening now, because I understand that 80 million euros is well, not being given, but it's part of the deal to Egypt. And could you give us some more information on what this deal exactly entails at this moment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aida. So let's see what Nabila has at this stage.
Yes, just before answering Aida, I would like to go back to you, Nawab. So indeed, we were invited at the Arab League Summit, and it will be the head of delegation in Algiers, Thomas Eckert, who will be representing the EU. So that's for your question. So Aida, for your question on Egypt, in total, our package amounts to, yes, indeed, 80 million euros, with the first deliveries for 23 million euros this year. However, it is only the beginning of our deepening cooperation on border control, and we will come forward with a second package next year for 57 million euros.
Okay, thank you. I see another hand up for Nabila, and that is Svetlana. Go ahead, Svetlana.
Yes, do you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Dana. Kosovo announced this weekend that it will apply for candidate status soon. So I have a question. How does it go procedurally, having in mind that 5 countries do not recognize Kosovo as independent state? Or this is just a political decision of the member states? Is it enough? And then the Commission works on opinion? Could you please clarify a little bit how does it go? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first of all, we are not responding to speculations or announcements regarding applications or any next steps which haven't been taken. In more general terms about the enlargement process, perhaps Nabila, but yes, Nabila will get back to you. But as a general rule, as you know, we are not dragged in commenting what possible steps our partners may be taking. Right. Any other question on foreign affairs for Nabila today? Yes, I think that Susanna has a question, and that refers to Brazil. I'm sorry that I didn't see your hand or the indication about your question earlier, and now you have the chance to ask it. Go ahead, Susanna. Susanna in the chat? Yes, she's in the chat.
You or you will decide. Actually, it's a follow-up question. I would like to understand, first of all, why did the President of the European Commission, why did she take so long to tweet a reaction? Because we saw some reactions yesterday night and only, from the President only to today in the morning. And I also would like to understand, compared to the Bolsonaro period, do you think it's going to be easier, all this cooperation that you have been speaking of? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in relation to the first question, I'm not going to be dragged on it. The President tweeted on this before 9 o'clock this morning. So it's up to you to make any comments or interpretation or conclusions. What I can tell you is that the President tweeted to congratulate the next President of Brazil at a very hour of a Monday morning, and I hope that you will share that agreement in retrospect. In relation to the second question, I believe that Nabila has given the broader tenets of our expectations in relation to Brazil. I'm not sure if she has anything to add to that.
No, the only thing I can add is that, as the HRVP rightly says, we are really looking forward to working with President Lula and his government.
Thank you. I believe it's also a foreign affairs question, so go ahead. Now we have taken all of those waiting in the chat.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the insistence. It's on Italy on Thursday. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has been invited to come here to Europe. She will be received by President von der Leyen and other high officials. So my question is, what's the agenda? I mean, the subjects. She has signalized she's aligning with the EU in main issues. There was concern on the part of Europe on her alignment, on her support to the EU. Are you going to discuss this, to look for guarantees that she will keep up with European commitments? How do you expect this conversation to go on Thursday?
Thank you very much for the question. I think we discussed that also on Friday. We had a similar question at the midday briefing, and it's very clear, of course, that we look forward to the first discussion with the new Prime Minister. We are going to discuss, obviously, all the matters of current affairs which are important to launch work on, including, of course, energy. We are looking forward to working with Italy as well as all other EU countries on finding solutions to the current problems in the energy crisis that we are experiencing. Of course, our continued support to Ukraine will be part of that discussion, as will be the necessity to implement the recovery plan that Italy is already implementing, and this is going to be the broad mapping of subject of discussion that we find important to address with Italy, and we expect to be addressed. But it's impossible to go into more details than we have done on Friday and right now in relation to expectations from that meeting. Any other questions today? On foreign affairs first? No. Nabila, good job, thank you. Let's move on. Nawab.
Thank you, Dana. On Friday, Brussels-based publication, EU Observer, published a report saying that the post of the coordinator for combating Islamophobia is vacant since 1 year. Now, I would like to ask you if this report is correct, and if yes, when are you going to appoint such a coordinator, taking into consideration the resolution passed by the Council of Europe earlier this month in Strasbourg, saying that Islamophobia is on the rise and increasing in Europe? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, Nawab. Now I wonder if this question is rather for, for Balázs, replaced by Stefan today. No? Christian, replaced by Stefan today, and he will attempt an answer.
Thank you very much for your question. This is, of course, a very important issue, also for us, clearly. We have launched the process and the procedure is ongoing, but I don't think I can give further details on this. Thank you.
Yes, if anything, we will get back to you later, but this is what we have at this stage. Any other questions for Stefan, as he's now on the podium? Nobody is... Well, yes, Rafaela, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it's for Stefan. It's kind of rule of law in Hungary. But
let's give it a try.
Let's try. I'm just wondering, there's still this national consultation going on in Hungary concerning sanctions, and accompanied by a campaign citing Brussels sanctions are destroying us. Have you ever talked to the Hungarian government about the aim of this consultation and the campaign?
Thank you so much. Of course, contacts with the national governments take place at all levels as appropriate and as necessary for the current affairs of the European Union. I'm not aware of any specific discussion in relation to this campaign. We have made our view clear regarding the national consultation and some of the imagery which is used in relation to the sanctions, and we have said very clearly that it's always important to stress what are the facts and what are the figures in relation to the aim of the sanctions that we have put in place collectively, recalling that sanctions are adopted at unanimity and that the Hungarian government was part of the decisions that we have taken on the sanctions introduced against Russia so far, and it would be important to spread information that is factually correct with regards to the process of adoption of those sanctions and also regarding the impact of those sanctions on Russia. But there is nothing we can elaborate further in relation to this campaign taking place in Hungary at this point. Yes, Rafaela, go ahead.
Will you take those or these developments into account when it comes to the decision on the rule of law mechanism within the next weeks?
Thank you so much. You know very well that each procedures that we have follow their own tracks based on the regulations which underpin them. So we are going to look at the rules and the specifications and the requirements of each regulation when assessing a case and making decisions on next steps. So it's important to see these things as separate tracks underpinned by their own legal basis. Any additional questions? Go ahead.
My name is Olena Abramovich. I work for Ukrainian TV. I have a question regarding sanctions. Since already 2 or 4 weeks, every Monday, Russia is bombing Ukrainian heating and power infrastructure. So I was wondering if this kind of recent developments is considered for the next package of sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I would wish to recall you that we have a very, very clear policy of condemning Russia's attacks on infrastructure, on civilian targets, and of course requiring for refraining from any escalation. And we have a very clear stance with regards to the fact that Russia needs to stop. This is why we have proposed and we have adopted 8 packages of sanctions. We have always said that we are firmly focused on the implementation of those sanctions because it's important that they have an effect on Russia and they diminish the capacity of Russia to wage this war and to refrain from additional escalatory steps. We are always ready and alert to work on additional steps regarding sanctions as necessary, but we do not talk in public about any about the timing or the content, the substance of any such steps. But indeed, we have exhorted in very strong terms Russia to refrain from targeting civilian infrastructure. This has a very, very bad impact, well, not only through loss of life, but also by worsening the conditions at a very crucial time, which is the coming of the winter. So we deplore those attacks in the strongest terms possible. Any additional questions on these matters? I see Desislavas' hand up in the system, so let's give it a try. Let's take her question.
Bonjour Dana, vous m'entendez bien? Une question en français, si vous permettez. Ma question concerne les sanctions déjà adoptées, et je crois que c'est une question pour Daniel Ferry, si je ne me trompe pas. Ça concerne les questions européennes concernant l'importation du pétrole russe et la dérogation que certains pays ont reçue. Donc concrètement, comme la Bulgarie. Par exemple, dans le cas concret, donc la Bulgarie, dans le cadre de sa dérogation, pourrait continuer à importer du pétrole russe. Et qu'est-ce qui suit par la suite? Est-ce qu'elle a le droit de produire des produits dérivés et de les vendre à tous les pays qu'elle le souhaite? Et donc, comme ça, des produits dérivés à la base du pétrole russe peuvent se retrouver dans d'autres pays européens qui n'ont pas eu la dérogation. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Desislava. Et voici Dan.
Bonjour, Desislava. Merci pour la question. Effectivement, en raison de la position géographique spécifique de la Bulgarie, il y a une dérogation spéciale pour la Bulgarie à l'interdiction d'importation du pétrole par voie maritime. Ceci est pour une période limitée, donc jusqu'à fin 2024. Et l'objectif de cette dérogation, c'est important, est d'approvisionner la Bulgarie en pétrole en raison de sa situation géographique spécifique et non de le revendre à d'autres États membres aux pays tiers. Et ceci est clarifié dans nos orientations, dans nos lignes directrices publiées sur notre site web.
Merci beaucoup, Dan. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour Dan sur les sanctions aujourd'hui? Je n'en vois pas. Sur d'autres questions qu'il couvre? Yes, Mose, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Dana. I have a question relating to the Commission's proposal for a new directive on the transport economy and the protection of workers' rights. It was an issue which was discussed at a hearing last week in European Parliament, which also was attended by Commissioner Schmidt, the Uber whistleblower. My question is about this so-called rebuttable presumption in the directive. What does it exactly mean? How many of the criteria in the directive need to be met in order for that presumption, let's say, to trigger or to be applied? And as Commissioner Smith said, does the Commission, let's say, fear that the Council somehow will water down the directive by adding more criteria for the rebuttable presumption? Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, what can you say on this today?
Yeah. Thanks, Mose. And of course, I'm stepping in here for Virla on this position. But Mose, first of all, I know that we were in touch with you directly in writing about the various different criteria and explaining in detail about our proposal. The rules, of course, that we proposed look at the platform rather than at the individual worker. And when a platform exercises a certain degree of control over the people performing work through it, the platform will be presumed to be the employer. Now, of course, there are a number of criteria which we have sent you via email, and at least 2 of those criteria need to be met. Now, of course, we've made this proposal. It is now being discussed by the co-legislators. Of course, there are a number of different meetings and comments being made, and for all of those things, we don't have any comment to make, as is usual when the legislative process is ongoing.
Thank you, Dan. Any additional questions on this or on other matters for Dan today? I don't see any. Thank you. Are there any additional questions for us today on any other topics? I don't see that either. So have a good afternoon, a good break, and see you later this week.